We have some breaking news that we are very sorry to report, and that is that Dolly Parton has died. Country music has no bigger or more beloved star than Parton, of course. Her career has spanned decades. This is a social media video making the announcement.
The room fell silent as Miley Cyrus stepped toward the microphone, her eyes carrying a grief words could barely describe. Every seat seemed frozen, every camera locked onto her. Then she began to sing, and within moments, the atmosphere changed completely. This wasn't just a tribute. It felt like a deeply personal goodbye to the woman who had shaped generations and touched Miley's own life.
I'm her honorary godmother. I'm her fairy godmother.
She doesn't really let me call her a godmother. She likes fairy godmother much better.
As her voice echoed through the room, emotions overwhelmed the crowd. But what happened next left everyone wondering. How could one performance carry so much love, pain, and history? To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. Dolly Parton's final goodbye. The world woke up to a moment many people never imagined they would have to face. Dolly Parton was gone on the 25th of August, 2026. At 80 years old, the legendary country singer, songwriter, actress, businesswoman, and philanthropist had become far more than an entertainer. She had a familiar voice, a warm smile, a source of hope, and, for millions of people, almost a member of the family. Her songs had followed generations through heartbreak, celebration, faith, and difficult moments. Now, suddenly, the woman behind those songs had taken her final bow. The news did not come through a glamorous television announcement or a major press conference. Instead, it came from someone who had been remarkably close to Dolly for decades, her nephew, Brian Seaver. In a video shared on social media, on behalf of the Parton and Owens families, Seaver delivered the heartbreaking news. But there was something especially emotional about the way he did it. He revealed that Dolly herself had thought about this moment long before it arrived. Years earlier, she had personally asked Brian to make the announcement when the time eventually came. That detail made the announcement feel even more personal. For more than 2 decades, Seaver had served as Dolly's head of security. He had stood close to her through countless performances, public appearances, travels, and important moments. He had protected one of the world's most recognizable women. But on this day, his responsibility was no longer to protect her from danger. It was to help tell the world that she was gone. And yet, Seaver did not want people to remember only the sadness. He spoke about Dolly as a beloved aunt and a treasured member of the family, someone whose love reached far beyond blood relatives. He reminded the world that her greatest gift was not simply the music she created, but the doors she opened for other people. Dolly had spent her life telling ordinary people that extraordinary dreams were possible. Singers, songwriters, musicians, children, families, and struggling dreamers all found encouragement in her story. She rose from humble beginnings and never forgot the people still trying to find their way. Her faith was also central to the family's farewell. The announcement expressed the belief that Dolly was now with Jesus, reunited with her beloved husband, Carl Dean, her parents, and other loved ones who had passed before her. So, on that heartbreaking day, the world was not simply saying goodbye to a superstar. It was saying goodbye to a woman who had turned talent into kindness, success into generosity, and fame into a reason to help others. Dolly Parton's life had ended. But the doors she opened, the people she inspired, the songs she left behind, and the hope she gave to millions were only beginning to tell the story of what she truly meant to the world. Why was her death so sudden? Could she have been struggling with any health challenges before her death? What were her final moments like? Let's find out. Parton's final days before death. Only 4 days before the world would learn of Dolly Parton's death, the legendary singer was still talking about the future. On the 21st of August, 2026, Parton spoke openly about her declining health, revealing that she had been dealing with several health problems. Looking back, she admitted that some of those problems may have gone unattended for too long because she had spent so much of her energy caring for her husband, Carl Dean, before his death in March 2025. For decades, Parton had been known for her strength, humor, and determination. But behind that familiar smile, she was facing a difficult personal battle. Health struggles were not entirely unfamiliar to Dolly Parton. Decades earlier, especially in the early 1980s, she had faced a serious health crisis that forced her to step away from work for months. Yet when health problems returned later in life, something remarkable remained unchanged. Dolly Parton still refused to act like someone who had run out of hope. Even as her body began making things more difficult, she kept her trademark humor and looked toward the future. She knew she was no longer as strong as she had once been, but that did not erase her dreams. In her mind, there were still songs waiting to be written, stories waiting to be told, and ideas waiting to become reality. For Dolly, slowing down never meant giving up. But her health was beginning to force changes she could no longer ignore. In 2025, doctors advised her to undergo several medical procedures, leading her to postpone a planned Las Vegas residency. It was a painful interruption for an artist who had spent her life moving from one project to another. Then, in May 2026, the situation changed again. Dolly announced that the Las Vegas residency would be canceled altogether. Even then, she tried to reassure her fans, explaining that she was responding well to treatment and continuing to improve. Her plans were changing, but her spirit remained remarkably strong. Behind the cancellations and medical procedures was a woman still looking ahead, still dreaming, and still believing there was more life and more music to give. That makes what happened next almost painfully difficult to comprehend. Just days before her death, Parton was still speaking with hope. She was discussing recovery, work, and unfinished dreams, as though there would be plenty of tomorrows waiting for her. Then, suddenly, there wasn't. The woman who had spent a lifetime turning hardship into music, laughter, and inspiration had reached the end of her journey. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part of those final days is that Dolly Parton didn't seem to be looking backward. She was still looking ahead, still dreaming, still planning, and still believing she had more to give. What is the content of Miley Cyrus's powerful tribute that stunned the entire world? Did she have anything so special with Dolly Parton? Keep watching. Miley's heartbreaking goodbye to Dolly. The news arrived, and for Miley Cyrus, it was far more than the loss of a music legend. On the 25th of August, 2026, the world learned that Dolly Parton had died at the age of 80. Almost immediately, tributes began pouring in from musicians, actors, public figures, and millions of ordinary fans who had grown up with her voice, her songs, her warmth, and her unmistakable personality. But among the earliest and most emotional reactions came from someone whose connection to Dolly was far more personal than a typical celebrity friendship: Miley Cyrus, Dolly Parton's beloved goddaughter. Miley took to X to share her grief, describing Dolly as the purest soul. Her words carried the pain of someone struggling to accept that a person who had been such a constant presence in her life was suddenly gone. She also reflected on something that had always made Dolly special: her ability to belong to everyone and yet somehow remain deeply personal to the people who knew her. For Miley, Dolly was never simply the woman behind legendary country songs. She was family. Their story stretched back years, long before Miley became a global pop star. Dolly had a special relationship with Miley's family and eventually became her godmother. As Miley grew up, that connection developed into something even deeper. A relationship built on affection, guidance, encouragement, music, and mutual admiration. The world eventually got to see pieces of that relationship. Dolly appeared alongside Miley during her Hannah Montana years, and the two performed together on several occasions. Their chemistry was unmistakable. There was something warm and natural about the way they interacted, as though the cameras were simply capturing a genuine family bond rather than a meeting between two famous performers. Dolly also remained one of Miley's strongest supporters. Through different stages of Miley's career, including periods when the younger singer faced harsh public criticism, Dolly continued to speak about her with affection and understanding. She recognized that Miley needed room to grow, experiment, make mistakes, and discover who she wanted to become. And perhaps that is why Miley's tribute carried such weight. She described Dolly as someone who had transcended time, suggesting that her influence would not disappear with her death. Dolly had touched generations before Miley, Miley's generation, and those who would come long after both of them. Their relationship represented something beautiful, a bridge between generations. Dolly helped inspire Miley's musical journey, while Miley became one of the artists capable of carrying pieces of Dolly's spirit into the future. So when Miley mourned Dolly, she was not simply saying goodbye to an icon, she was saying goodbye to her godmother, mentor, family, and one of the most important women in her life. And behind the worldwide celebration of Dolly Parton's extraordinary legacy was one deeply personal truth. For Miley Cyrus, the world had lost Dolly Parton, but she had lost someone she called family. How close could Miley Cyrus have been to Dolly Parton? Were they really inseparable? For how long have they known each other? Stay tuned. Dolly and Miley's unbreakable bond. Long before Miley Cyrus became a global pop star, before Hannah Montana made her a household name, there was already a special woman waiting in her life, Dolly Parton. Their story did not begin on a concert stage or inside a recording studio. It began with friendship. Dolly had become close to Miley's father, country singer Billy Ray Cyrus, around the time he was touring with his 1992 hit, Achy Breaky Heart. During that period, Billy Ray shared some life-changing news. He and his family were expecting a baby girl. Then came a request that would connect 2 generations of music history. He asked Dolly to become his daughter's godmother. Dolly said yes. From that moment, her relationship with Miley became something far more personal than a celebrity friendship. Dolly knew Miley before the world knew her. She watched her grow, calling her affectionately her little sweetheart, and remained a loving presence as the young girl slowly found her own voice. Then, years later, their relationship took an unexpected turn when Dolly stepped into Miley's world on Hannah Montana. Millions of viewers knew Dolly as the legendary country star, but on the Disney show she appeared as Aunt Dolly, bringing a piece of their real-life relationship onto the screen. For Miley, having her godmother beside her was deeply special. For Dolly, being around the young star carried the warmth and pride of watching someone she loved grow before her eyes. But the bond became even more meaningful when Miley entered adulthood. As Miley moved away from her innocent Hannah Montana image, she faced enormous criticism. Some people questioned her choices, her music, and the direction of her life. Yet Dolly did not turn her back on her. Instead, she defended Miley and reminded the world that growing up means discovering who you really are. She understood that Miley needed room to make her own choices, even when those choices attracted criticism. And Miley never forgot that support. She has spoken about Dolly as an important maternal figure and credited her with teaching lessons about kindness, humility, and treating people with respect. Their bond also flourished through music. They performed together on several occasions, blending Dolly's timeless country sound with Miley's modern style. Yet behind every performance was something audiences could not fully see: genuine affection between a godmother and her goddaughter. Then came another remarkable discovery. In 2024, genealogy research revealed that Dolly and Miley were not only connected through friendship and godparenthood, they were also distant blood relatives, reportedly seventh cousins once removed. It was almost as if their extraordinary relationship had been written into the family tree all along. What began with a simple question from a young father to a beloved country star eventually became one of entertainment's most touching relationships. A bond built on family, music, guidance, loyalty, and love. But what was Dolly Parton's beginning like? Did she have her life all figured out by her parents, or was she born into fame? Stay with us. Dolly Parton's humble beginnings and dreams. Dolly Rebecca Parton's story did not begin under bright stage lights, surrounded by fame or wealth. It began in a tiny one-room cabin near the Little Pigeon River in Pittman Center, Tennessee, on the 19th of January, 1946. She was the fourth of 12 children born to Robert Lee Parton Sr. and Avi Lee Parton, in a family that had almost nothing except determination, faith, and one another. Money was scarce. The Partons lived largely from a small farm, while Dolly's father took whatever work he could find, working as a sharecropper, farmer, and construction worker. Her mother carried another enormous responsibility, raising 12 children and keeping the household together, often while dealing with poor health. Yet poverty never became the whole story of Dolly's childhood. Inside that crowded little home, something far more valuable was growing. There was music, there were stories, there was laughter, prayer, food shared around the table, and the strong sense that family mattered. Dolly's father could not read or write, but she remembered him as remarkably clever, especially when it came to business and making a living. From her mother came another gift, the love of music. Avi Lee knew Appalachian songs, old ballads, legends, and stories handed down through generations. Even when she was unwell, she would sing and tell stories to her children, filling their modest home with sounds that would eventually echo around the world. Faith was just as important. The family regularly attended the Church of God, where Dolly's grandfather, Jake Owens, served as a Pentecostal preacher. Dolly began singing publicly in church when she was only 6. At 7, she was already playing a homemade guitar. By 8, an uncle gave her her first proper guitar, and the young girl began discovering that music could become more than a pastime, it could become her future. The family eventually moved to a small farm and cabin on Locust Ridge. The mountains, valleys, and simple life surrounding her became deeply woven into Dolly's identity. Years later, she would turn those memories into songs. My Tennessee Mountain Home captured her love for the place she came from, while Coat of Many Colors transformed childhood poverty into a story about dignity, love, and the priceless things money could never buy. Then came 1964. After graduating from Sevier County High School, Dolly faced a decision that would change everything. The very next day, she left for Nashville with little more than determination and a dream. She was a poor mountain girl heading toward an uncertain future. She could not have known it then, but that journey would eventually turn her childhood struggles into songs, her dreams into a legendary career, and her name into one of the most beloved in American music. What was so special about Dolly Parton in the entertainment industry? How was she able to engrave her name with gold inscriptions in the industry? Let's find out. Dolly Parton's extraordinary rise. What began with a guitar in her hands, a voice full of feeling, and a young girl's impossible-looking dream eventually became a story much larger than music. Dolly Parton may have first captured hearts as a country singer and songwriter, but she refused to let herself be placed inside a single box. As her fame grew, she kept pushing through new doors into Hollywood, television, business, theater, literature, and countless creative ventures. Yet, through every new chapter, every award, and every transformation, she somehow remained the same Dolly people had fallen in love with. Warm, funny, hardworking, humble, and unmistakably herself. Her Hollywood breakthrough arrived in 1980 with 9 to 5. Starring alongside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, Dolly quickly proved that she was not simply a country star trying her hand at acting. She belonged there, and she made that moment even more unforgettable by writing and performing the film's iconic theme song. The song exploded beyond the movie, becoming a massive hit and giving Dolly her first #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100. In one remarkable moment, the woman who had built her name in country music had crossed into mainstream pop culture. But Dolly was only getting started. She went on to appear in films including The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Rhinestone, Steel Magnolias, and Joyful Noise. With every performance, audiences discovered another side of her: her comic timing, warmth, vulnerability, musical ability, and remarkable emotional depth. Still, music remained the heartbeat beneath everything she did. Dolly continued writing, recording, and collaborating with some of the greatest performers of her generation. Her work with Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris on the celebrated Trio albums became a powerful reminder that her voice could stand beside other legendary voices without ever losing its own identity. Then, Dolly carried her songwriting genius to Broadway. When 9 to 5 was transformed into a stage musical, she wrote the music, earning a Tony Award nomination and proving once again that her creativity could travel almost anywhere. And then came the honors. 11 Grammy Awards, an Emmy, an honorary Oscar, the National Medal of Arts, Kennedy Center Honors, induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1999. Then, more than 2 decades later, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022. By 2025, Dolly's extraordinary journey had become a story worthy of the stage itself, with Dolly, a true original musical premiering in Nashville. Yet perhaps the greatest achievement was not any individual award. Dolly Parton had become something extraordinarily rare. A singer, songwriter, actress, author, producer, businesswoman, philanthropist, and cultural icon who never abandoned the simple roots that shaped her. The world kept changing around her. Dolly simply kept shining through it all. Was Dolly Parton ever married, or was completely fixated on her career? Who did she get married to? What was her love life like? Did the marriage stand the test of time? Stay glued. Dolly and Carl's Quiet Forever. Dolly Parton's love story with Carl Thomas Dean began with an ordinary moment that could easily have been forgotten. In 1964, just one day after graduating from high school, Dolly arrived in Nashville with a suitcase, big dreams, and the determination to build a career in music. While doing her laundry at the wishy-washy laundromat, she stepped outside for a drink. That was when a young Nashville man named Carl Dean happened to drive past. Carl noticed Dolly and stopped to speak with her. With a playful comment, he warned her that the shirt she was wearing might leave her exposed to the sun. It was a simple exchange between two strangers, but neither could have known that those few words would become the first chapter of a relationship that would last nearly 6 decades. 2 years later, on the 30th of May 1966, Dolly and Carl quietly married in Ringgold, Georgia. By then, Dolly's musical ambitions were beginning to take shape. In the years that followed, she would become a global superstar, while Carl made a very different choice. He wanted no part of fame. Carl operated an asphalt and driveway paving business in Nashville and deliberately stayed behind the scenes. He rarely appeared beside Dolly at red carpet events, award ceremonies, or public gatherings. But Dolly made it clear that his absence was never a sign of distance. Carl simply treasured his privacy. He could even visit Dollywood by himself, walk around unnoticed, and enjoy the park without being treated like a celebrity's husband. Away from cameras, Dolly described a very different Carl. Affectionate, funny, romantic, and surprisingly thoughtful. He sometimes surprised her with spontaneous gestures and even wrote poems for her. Their love was not built on public appearances but on the quiet moments they shared when nobody else was watching. In 2016, after 50 years of marriage, the couple celebrated their remarkable journey by renewing their wedding vows. They had also built a private life together in Brentwood, Tennessee. In 1972, they moved onto a 75-acre property where Carl, Dolly's uncle, and her brothers helped build their home. Dolly and Carl eventually lived there for more than 52 years. They never had children of their own, but family remained central to their lives. They helped care for several of Dolly's younger siblings, becoming cherished figures to their nieces and nephews, who affectionately called them Uncle Peepaw and Aunt Granny. Then, after almost 59 years of marriage, their extraordinary private partnership came to an end. Carl Dean died in Nashville on the 3rd of March, 2025, at the age of 82. For nearly 6 decades, while the world watched Dolly Parton become an icon, Carl remained quietly beside her, loving her, without needing to share her spotlight. Their story was never the loudest love story in Hollywood. Perhaps that was precisely what made it so enduring. Now, what do you think about Miley Cyrus's stunning tribute? Could her health have deteriorated due to loneliness felt after her husband's death? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.